we are actually not too far off being able to just redeploy Leyline to the Void.
True. Yeah, being able to just filter your red mana or colorless mana through the key into another black. It's almost like you just played a couple copies of Metamorphose in your deck. All right. A lot of nothing going on so far on Josh's side. See what Brian's able to follow this up with.
Yeah, not too many threats able to be deployed through Leyline here for Coval. The only real thing we have are Bowmasters. It's possibly boarded into Dothy Voidwalker. If you expect something like Lion's Eye Diamond plus Echo of Eons, it becomes pretty enticing.
Golrod is good card.
That also makes a lot of sense as to why you would take a Braid from Josh's hand. If that's the only thing you're worried about, you're not going to take Defense Grid because Defense Grid doesn't really stop this Null Rod from being in play. And so just going to stay with that Null Rod in play.
Because it turns out you don't really have to worry about your opponent resolving spells if none of the spells do anything.
Yeah, so the main issue would have been a top decked Urza Saga, but with that Wasteland, he has that line angle covered. So now we're just going to have to fade a Braid plus land. We know they don't have land, so going to take one of these cards that doesn't have much text. Defense Grid is the only one that has text with the Null Rod in play, and doesn't look like we're super close to removing that from Josh's side, so it makes a lot of sense that you take the only card with effective text here.
Yeah, because otherwise Josh has to, like, with the Defense Grid in play, he only really has to draw a land in order to cast it, and then draw in a Braid, and he can just start going off. But as is, now he needs to draw land, protection, a Braid, and do it quickly because Brian is still just putting on pressure and is going to be able to keep interacting.
Yeah. You can just keep sculpting his hand for as long as you let him, and there's not really any meaningful pressure on the other side of the battlefield. So it's possible we can just build up to a petty theft if we want that. We can just build up a pile of Force of Wills in hand. There's just not really that much that's pressuring us from Josh's side here.
And it does look like Brian is holding both a Daze and a Force of Will, so he's going to have plenty of options. And that is our first Surveil land we've seen today.
Yeah, it is a very important aspect out of these decks that are really only two to three colors. It's a little bit harder for the 4 to 5 color decks to play them just because they need to be able to cast their spells more consistently, and so it's a little bit harder to slot in. But in a deck like this, you can fetch the Surveil land, put the trigger on the stack, and then Brainstorm. And so you can make, and so if you've drawn some creature that you want to go to the graveyard, you can ensure that it goes to the graveyard with just this adding one Surveil land to your deck, which is a huge upside.
Yeah, and there's so many turns too in especially like these more mid-rangey decks where you just don't do anything on turn one.
Yeah.
Like, or you have a turn one where you have a Grief to pitch and you don't have the reanimate. You're sitting on a animate dead. So you might as well fetch the Surveil land and, ooh, look, an Atraxa.
Yeah.
I'm going to put that in the graveyard.
Yeah, it just really useful tool to just, when you don't have a ton going on and don't have to spend your mana every turn, you can just deploy it and get a small amount of incremental value that you kind of just get for free just by playing the game. Which is certainly something that these decks don't always have access to, which is utility via the lands.
Alright, and we don't have life totals updated at the moment because the players are just following their own muscle memory and just keeping track on their pads.
Yeah.
But I can assure you, Josh's is lower than Brian's.
Yes.
I believe he should be at...
I think it's attacked twice.
Well, he is at dead.
Yeah.
He is not going to keep wanting to play this because he knows he does not have a way out of it.
Yeah, that is something that this scam deck offers that traditional Delver kind of doesn't. Like in game one, we just saw a super fast clock off the Atraxa very early. That's way faster than Delver would normally be able to pressure, with a ton of card advantage backed up from the Atraxa drawing him 4 cards. Multiple hand disruption spells that Delver doesn't get access to. We saw those be relevant in game two, where he had the disruption for the Abrade that could have taken out his Null Rod and allowed Josh back into the game. But with the pitch Grief, just doesn't allow any room for error on his side. Very cleanly takes it.
Yeah, this blue-black Scaminator deck is super efficient. It is definitely going to be here to stay. The only way that I could see anything happening with this deck is if somebody comes up with something better, but it's already playing all the best blue and black cards right now.
Yeah, I think the main thing that would cause this deck to fall out is Grief getting banned, which I don't think is unlikely at this rate.
Yeah, especially with this deck basically just showing up in the last 2 or 3 weeks, and it is already at the top of every leaderboard out there.
Yeah, it's just the best deck in the format right now. I think it's the ideal choice for a tournament like this, where it's a paper event. You don't really know what the metagame's going to look like. You're just going to show up, play the best deck, and if people aren't prepared, you're just going to crush them. And I think this is a great deck choice for the week by Coval here.
100%. So we're going to see if we can get another match going up on the coverage here. But if we are not able to do that, then we will be back with round 6. But we'll have to see how a couple of the other top table matches are, because you don't want to stop them in the middle of a game. But if we can catch somebody going to game 2 or game 3, then we might get them on camera. But for now, we hope that everybody is able to stick around, watch the rest of the Swiss. We got one more round coming. We got 3 rounds in the top 8. Hopefully the Ethernet cable that we plugged in helps solve some of the issues. And we hope that everybody sticks around.
Don't go anywhere. More Live Legacy right after this. Welcome back, everyone. You may have noticed came back a little bit earlier than usual after that short of a round. We did manage to find a match that had just finished game 1. Here to take you game 2 of, we have Randy back in on his red-black Karn deck. On the other side, we have a more interesting deck possible only because of the recent Fallout set. Talk to us about it.
Yeah, like we mentioned earlier when Jared was on camera, he is playing a couple copies of the Mega Sloth. Admittedly, this is probably a matchup where those can come out. But it is a card that has impressed to me in the couple of matches that I've seen it actually be played as being a nice big backup plan for when you're trying to make a 2020.
Yeah, I imagine the card is most useful against Delver-esque decks, where you just want to have some backup plan, and because they have Wasteland or something like that, and you're just able to deploy a 2-mana 8/8 Trampler, which is very strong.
Yeah, especially since a lot of the times most people don't keep that much removal in against Green-Black Deaths because so much of the removal doesn't actually answer.
Yeah.
But luckily, we have their game 2 coming up. Jared is going to be on the play. Looks like Randy might be mulliganing to 6 here.
This is a bit of an unfortunate matchup for Jared, I would say. He's going to be very pressured into having early disruption, have to have something like a Thoughtseize, maybe a Collector Oof even, would be the ideal scenario for him. Just have any way to disrupt the early game before we can make that 2020. Because Randy's is a deck that can win before the 2020 can hit.
Yeah, when I was walking past trying to find an extra match, I did see, I believe there were 8 counters on a One Ring that kept on tapping every time he cast a spell. And Jared was sitting there hoping that somehow he whiffed so he could make the 2020 that he had in play. Unfortunately, as you can see, Randy did not whiff, nor should he with that much card draw.
Yeah, once the ring gets up to about 3 and you have a Paradox Engine, it's just game over.
Alright, and it looks like he is taking another mulligan here, which is definitely good if you are Jared, because this red-black Karn deck needs like a critical mass of spells in order to function.
Sort of. You need about 4 cards to win, which is not as few as Jared would like it to be, certainly.
True.
But it is. We are approaching a somewhat critical threshold here, and if Jared is sitting on any sort of interaction at all, it is starting to look good. But again, if Randy's 4 is just like Ancient Tomb, Bryn Monolith, Key the One Ring, it's still going to be an uphill battle for Jared.
It definitely could be, but at the same time, a hand like that, if Jared's just holding a Force of Vigor, and then in response to untapping the Monolith, you just blow them both up, Randy's hand does nothing anymore.
Yeah.
So the lower he goes on resources here, yeah, he does have some busted hands he can draw to, but any interaction from Jared is just going to be back-breaking at this point.
Yeah, and given Jared kept 7, it has to be pretty likely, I would imagine, that Jared would go pretty low for any amount of relevant interaction at all, because you know how insane the draws can be from your opponent's deck, that you just need any sort of way to slow them down you possibly can, and that your main plan of just make a fast 2020 just isn't quite going to cut it here.
And it looks like Randy is on 5. I see him putting 2 back down there. So we'll see what kind of interruption Jared can put here. Let's see, what 2-mana spell? Lotus Petal into a Grim Monolith. Monolith for 3, down to 2. And that would have been the time, so he does have the Karn.
Yeah, that's almost exactly what I spoke about here when 4 mana. I think
So
almost, if not the entire. I think that might have been the entire hand, all into 4. Top deck's whatever piece was missing from the hand. But
yeah, I think it was actually a mulligan to 5 because he put 2 cards down. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1 card for his draw step. I think he's got 1 card in hand, which is now going to be 2 with this Karn.
Yeah.
Didn't quite see what he picked up there, but you have to assume it's not good for Jared.
Yeah, pretty hard to fight through this Karn. Brady doesn't have as much mana as he would like, so something like an Abrupt Decay on the Grim Monolith after the untap would be pretty good here, but it is still going to be quite an uphill battle. Didn't have that turn 1 interaction spell that really needed to see out of this deck in order to keep up with the matchup.
Yeah, and if Jared is sitting on the Abrupt Decay here, like, could just be waiting for Randy to tap the key and use that extra mana. Because if you can just pinch a little bit of mana here, it could disrupt him enough to where the Karn's just kind of sitting there.
Yeah. It's also possible we just have something like Elvish Spirit Guide plus Crop Rotation and are able to just make a 20/20 on this turn, and our hand is just turn 2 20/20 on the play and hope that's good enough. And based on him not interacting here,
I think it's got to be what he has.
I would have to imagine that it's hard for me to see anything that he has other than that plan. Oh, we see a passing of the turn.
Ooh. Alright, so there's a Lattice in hand.
Yeah.
Jared definitely needs something good here, otherwise this match is going to be real quick.
Yeah.
He's got the Dark Depths.
Yeah. Gonna need a little bit more than that here. So, Elvish Reclaimer does...
Well, honestly, with having the Lattice in hand, though, Jared still beats that.
Yeah, it does beat the Lattice eventually. Well, if you can grow it to a 3. Because it doesn't beat it at just 1 power. You need it at the 3 power. Because otherwise you can just turn your Lattice into a blocker every turn. Yeah, and I think that might be... Yeah, and because he got it last turn, already. Yep. It's blocker this turn. So, not really sure how we get out of this here.
He doesn't.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's kind of an unfortunate matchup draw there for Jared. But, you know, he put up what fight he could. And like you said, there's that Abrupt Decay, there's the hand disruption.
Yeah, just, I guess, not really able to find the cards he needed there and leverage them effectively, unfortunately.
Ooh, I see a Wishclaw Talisman that he's holding over there.
Yeah.
That is a very nice black card to play in this deck.
Yeah, I saw it in play as we were picking this matchup. It makes some sense if you're just going off potentially a wish target as well. Just get it to wish for some card that you don't want to play. You want to play all 4 main. Just additional copies of whatever card you need.
Yeah, all right. We're going to take a look around the room, see if there's anybody else who's got a convenient stopping point for us to grab them on camera. But otherwise, we will be back with round 6. And we will be fully back because, hey, we have connection now.
Yeah, it only took us 4.5 rounds, but we did get there. So we are, I believe, fully live at this point.
We should be. So thank you very much, everybody, for sticking around this long, sticking around through all of our technical difficulties. We will be back with more Paper Legacy in just a little bit. All right, welcome back to our final round of Swiss here for Buffalo Chicken Dip number 13. We've got a scam mirror with the winning in for top 8.
Yeah. So we have one of these players will make top 8 with Scam. Coval is playing to make top 8 with Scam. Not really sure how many other copies, but we do have a couple number of copies of this deck doing pretty well here. Not really surprised. Shouldn't really be surprised to anyone. I do think this is the favorite deck of the month going into this event. Certainly does not surprise me that players have managed to put up results with it.
Yeah. And this is going to be kind of an interesting mirror match because you run the risk, especially in game 1, of your opponent taking your reanimation targets or even just casting in Grief and taking it out of your hand and then doing it themselves.
Yeah, Grief is certainly the most important card in the matchup here. I'm going to look to probably reanimate that instead of trying to entomb something better, just because it's really dangerous to try to resolve entomb and then follow it up with reanimate. So probably not what players are really going to be looking to do in this matchup here. As we do see the hand from Ian, Dave's two Bowmasters, 2 Trolls. Bowmaster is a card that Avi could be interested in taking, depending on the nature of his hand. Daze also another card that makes a lot of sense if we want to try to resolve something this turn, and then just fight through this pile of Bowmasters later. Does look like we want to try to resolve that reanimate on Grief this turn. Maybe clear out one of the 2 Bowmasters, try to start trading off for those, or potentially take the Force, make sure all of our own spells resolve, let us set up for some sort of entomb into second reanimate option.
All right, now with the counter spells out of the way, Ian's got a rather clunky hand. But give it a couple turns, and these trolls are going to start cycling into lands, and he's going to actually be able to do something.
Yeah, it's a fine hand right now. The worry is just if there's any amount of interaction at all from the other side. What that can really pose a huge threat. So these Bowmasters are very good in this mirror. However, if your opponent is holding something like Entomb plus Underground Sea plus Reanimate, our hand does absolutely nothing to stop that currently.
Right, so we get a basic off of that troll that he cycled. And we're going to go back over to his turn and see if he's got anything to do other than just maybe playing a Bowmaster to block.
Yeah, I don't think he's likely to want to trade the Bowmaster for this Grief. Bowmaster in play is a lot better than Grief in play. Just the ability to turn off cantrips from the opposing deck is something that's very, very important here. So it does look like those are Underground Seas, not
Underground
basic
Seas.
swamps.
Okay. That makes a little more sense.
Yeah, it's kind of what I assumed. It didn't quite look like the basic swamp art.
With all the secret layers nowadays, you can never really tell. And Avi looking to protect this Grief, which kind of suggests he doesn't have a ton else going on.
Yeah, potentially means he has some cantrips he wants to resolve, like that Ponder. Maybe means he only has an answer to one of the Bowmasters in hand, can answer the other one, has something like a Reanimate on the second Bowmaster to deal with his opponent's first. Could mean a number of things, but forcing a Bowmaster when you know your opponent has a second one is certainly a tell. But I wonder what Ian can make of that here.
Just gonna have to see how kind the top of his deck is, or if he's able to find cantrips of his own. Because right now the hand's just a bunch of black cards. Another troll cycling away, probably getting another Underground Sea.
This is a position where I wouldn't be super surprised to see an mortuary fetched. If we don't have much of a follow-up, but looks like we do have something to follow it up with. So, to deploy some sort of cantrip here, I would imagine.
Could also end up being a reanimate of his own on a troll.
That would be a huge shift in this match, or in this game here. You gotta reanimate going.
Oh, just a land go, just trying to hit his land drops and get to a point where he's able to start casting the second Bowmaster. Another grief from Avi here.
Pitched a lot of cards. Don't think he's has much left to work with, if I had to guess.
I think those might be his last cards. Looking at a Ponder, Entomb, and a Bowmaster as the options to take here, I feel like it's just take the Ponder and just try to cross the finish line almost.
Yeah, the problem is the Bowmaster is really good at blocking the grief. Also prevents some of your own good top decks. Yeah, it looks like that's the last card out of Avi's hand. So, probably gonna Tomb for an Archon here. Try to ponder into some way to reanimate it. And if we find it before Avi can find our reanimation spell for our threat, that's gonna be game. But, on the other hand, if this Ponder misses, and Avi top decks a reanimate of his own, it's gonna be really hard for Ian to get back in this game.
Yeah, that's kind of what I was talking about before the game started. It's like you run that gambit of, I'm going to put this thing in the graveyard. I couldn't get it out, and then you can. That's a really good way to lose a game.
Yeah, it's something that I imagine will be trimmed on post-board, just because casting an Entomb can be so dangerous if the opponent has Force of Will for your reanimation spell. But in game one, we will see these Entombs flying around here.
And we are going to see that Ponder. Let's see what Ian's able to find here. I feel like anything other than reanimation spell, you kind of just have to ship here.
Yeah, there's some combination of like Bowmasters plus Force of Will that you might be interested in keeping, but without seeing any sort of reanimate, I think it's just a pretty easy shuffle here. There's a lot more piles that you would shuffle than piles you wouldn't shuffle here, just because you're looking for a pretty small subsection of cards on this turn cycle.
No, definitely, because you need to find something that can advance your own game plan here, because just going cantrip into cantrip into cantrip isn't that appealing when you're staring down a 3-2 on the other side you can't block.
Right, also, there's not that many turns where you can draw a reanimate and have it be a live draw, because you're being attacked for 3 every turn, and at some point you will no longer be able to reanimate your Atraxa.
Yeah, like this is the last turn where he would be able to actually use it on an Atraxa, because Atraxa is a 7-drop.
Yeah.
So next turn he's going to take that hit and go down to 3. So I think he's basically either has to have a Bowmaster here, and yep, there's the Bowmaster. But got the Hardcast Days floating the mana to play around other days. Not hard cast days.
Yeah.
Normal cast days. It's kind of like the alternate casting cost of Force of Will being 3 blue.
Yeah. It's pretty good draw from Avi there. Really need to find an Animate Dead. Top couple cards of the deck. Or actually reanimate on a Bowmasters would be okay. Wouldn't be great here.
But at least removes the clock.
It removes the clock. You get to double block. Buy it 1 or 2 more turns here. Could be okay, but
yeah, with Ian going down to 4 here, the window's definitely closing.
Yeah, I think this grief probably doesn't matter too much. Yeah,
oh, and it looks like he's at 3 too, which is even worse.
Yeah. So we have Animate Dead as the live draw. We can have reanimate for Bowmasters still gets you out of this. That's, you can have another Bowmaster as follow-up. Brazen Borrow would be insane, or Whale of the Forgotten, depending on the numbers in the main decks here. But not that many outs. Not as many as you would like here.
Yeah, but whatever the out is, he kind of needs to hit right here. Oh, we got a redraw.
Yeah. Ponder means you're drawing to a smaller subsection here. You're only drawing to that reanimate on your Bowmasters. That's the only thing that really gets you out of this. I guess you still can draw the Brazen Borrower or the Whale because you do have the fetch land in hand that can get the next mana source, but not too many outs. Just have to get a little bit lucky here.
Yeah, and honestly, a lot of the line. Okay, so he is at 4, which is very relevant.
Oh, okay.
Because otherwise, if he were to rip the Reanimator or the Reanimate here, get a Bowmaster, and be able to answer the Grief, then you end up getting to a point where Avi just top decks his own Reanimate or his own Bowmaster, and he's just dead. But looks like he is just going to be dead anyway, missed on the top deck. So we are going to go to game number 2 here. I know you mentioned that both players might trim on some of the heavier Reanimator side of things.
Yeah.
How heavy do you think they don't want to be in the mirror match?
So I think you want all of your Reanimates and Animate Deads. They're just really good. A lot of creatures end up in the graveyard between... Grief is one of the pivotal cards in the matchup. Grief is fantastic. Rips your opponent's reanimation spells. Gives you a great body to reanimate of your own. Lets you really seize control of the initiative, as we saw in that game. Troll is really, really big. And basically impossible to block. You can't block it without something like a Bowmaster producing 2 extra bodies. And it's just huge threat in the matchup. So you really don't want to be shaving on any of your animates. Entomb is a card that's really tricky to resolve. And also, when players have access to these sideboard cards that hate on graveyards, it's going to be a lot harder to resolve Entomb into Reanimate than it is pre-board. And so I would imagine a lot of those Entombs are coming out here.
Especially since you can have setups where, like, if Avi casts a Entomb, Ian lets it resolve, counters the reanimation spell, and then goes to his turn and plays his own.
Yeah, that's just game over.
It's just game over at that point, yeah. So you end up having a lot more positioning that you would require to make use of your Entombs, whereas if you're playing just the reanimates themselves, well, you're going to be trading resources the whole game. You're playing these trolls. You're going to be cycling through those. Bowmasters are trading back and forth. You're going to get something out of it.
Even in our last game, like, a Grief or an Atraxa or an Archon were never put into play off of the reanimates. Entomb put one of those threats into play, but there always would have been something great to reanimate, even without that Entomb being cast.
Exactly.
Right? Like, the Entomb being cast didn't really change the math on Reanimate or Animate Dead being great top decks for either player in the game. And so just putting yourself down a card to, like, maybe have a chance at reanimating a better threat, just not really what the matchup is about.
Mm-hmm. So do you think that they're going to try to kind of look for more of a Delver-like draw here, or is it going to still kind of play like a mid-range blue-black deck?
So it's going to... I envision it playing out a lot more like a Delver game plan, except in the instance where a player has that turn 1 Grief hand. Because if you are on the play and you have turn 1 Grief plus Reanimate, that's a lot of resources gone from both players' hands. A lot of the important cards are gone from your opponent. You have a 3-2 in play that's somewhat hard to deal with. You've stripped multiple cards out of your opponent's hand. You really have a lot of, and you have a lot of ideas on how you want the matchup to play out. And your opponent is really just has to draw the cards that they need and don't have a lot of time to draw.
There's not a whole lot of wiggle.
Right.
All right, players are all shuffled up, going for their 7s. See if we can keep a couple of 7s here and have a nice interactive game of Magic. Because it seems like we haven't had that many of those today.
Yeah, these are decks that really will keep most 7s as long as they have lands and some amount of spells they cast at some point during the game. Just because you have the Grief that pitches, you have the Forces that pitch. Those aren't cards you're going to want to be cutting in this matchup, and because they all end with you going down on cards, you're going to be playing a very low resource game, and these low resource games are really much worse when either player takes them all.
Yeah, because if you're sitting there with all of these 1-for-2s instead of the usual way you want to do it, which is 2-for-1, you're going to just get rid of your own resources a lot quicker in these style mirror matches as opposed to a traditional Delver mirror match where a lot of your cards are just 1-for-1s.
Yeah. Also in Silver, like, you see these brainstorms held for a while, and people kind of hold on to their cards, and we get to this late game where both players are holding a couple of cards, and you have to maneuver around your opponent's forces and daisies. That's not really the same here. Cards are just gonna get ripped out of hands. People are gonna be left with absolutely nothing before too long. And the more people grief and can reanimate that grief, it's just the lower and lower and lower the resource gameplay is. This match.
All right, we got a ponder for a ponder here. So no fast grief, which doesn't surprise me too much, because if you grief your opponent and just see double reanimate, it doesn't feel that great when you know it's going to come right back at you.
Yeah, it's not ideal. I mean, if you have the grief reanimate, you just always go for it, but it appears neither player had that, so just going to take some time to set up. Hope that opponent doesn't grief reanimate you, and alright. Ponder Shuffle's just taking the time to set up their own game plans, make sure they're not blown out by their opponent reanimating their own creatures. This might be a bit of a slower game. It does take a while to set up for these reanimate decks. They don't always just... Their one drops don't always just cost one. Unlike Delver, where it instantly deployed.
Plus, when you're looking at a deck like this, as much as it feels like they always have it, they really don't always have it.
Especially with these Entombs removed, you have less of these fast draws. It's certainly possible that some players either play left in a number of Entombs or even possibly all of their Entombs, but it is a number that I think will be lower in the post-sport games.
It's kind of just how each player looks at the matchup and wants to play it.
Right.
Because you can have the same exact 75, and you can play completely different than your opponent does.
Yes.
So it's just, what do you think is the most important resource in the game versus who they think it is? And how do you counteract what you think your opponent is thinking while they think what you think about thinking about it? I just hurt my brain a little bit.
Yeah, these blue decks really allow you to have a lot of really form your own ideas about how you want the matchup to play out, and you can sideboard in a way that really helps how you want to play the game and interact, and what axes you want to interact on with your opponents.
Because in a lot of legacy matchups, honestly, the most important thing is to have a plan and stick to it until it's not going to work anymore, and then figure out a new plan.
Yeah, and these blue tempo Days tempo-oriented decks have a lot of different plans that you can adjust mid-sideboarding that can drastically alter what plans you want to go for, how you want to approach the matchup. Like, just the number of Entombs that a player leaves in can drastically change how the matchup is going to play out.
Anytime you're looking at 4 cards off of a Ponder, 3 more cards off of a Brainstorm, you're going to find the cards that you left in. But that's a Dauthi Voidwalker coming in, which is a super solid card when your opponent's putting all their stuff in the graveyard.
Yeah, it really is difficult for a player to do anything with grief if there's a Dauthi in play. It's also not an easy card to remove other than with these Brazen Borrowers, because players just don't really play that much removal in these decks.
Because most of the time your soft removal is your Orcish Bowmasters, because you're able to ping and block. Well, you can't block the shadow creature, so that's even one less way to remove it off the table.
Yeah. This Bowmaster is the most played removal spell in the format, and for good reason, but it is pretty exploitable by just playing creatures with more than one toughness.
Yeah, it's gotten to a point where even Mother of Runes is starting to get knocked out of D&T a little bit. And that's a very strange place to be in.
Yeah, it's just really hard to answer this like one damage removal by doing anything other than playing creatures with more than one toughness.
Yeah, luckily we're not quite at the Renin 6 days or the main decking my gut shots for Ragavan days. But it still has such a huge impact on the format, just determining which cards are playable.
So here we do see the grief after the Dauthi is off the table, which makes a lot of sense because it's really hard for It means you probably are going to reanimate this grief this turn.
Oh, or that's going to get reanimated, and it's not going to end well.
Yeah, this is part of why I would be cutting my entire Entomb package. Is things like this can very easily happen, and if you just have any other card get grief there, you're gonna have their grief's gonna take another card out of your hand. You're still sitting pretty with what, 6 cards in hand, 5 cards in hand after that. You have plenty of resources. Now you have 6 cards in hand, but your opponent just drew an extra 3. You don't have any way to deal with this, and you're staring down a 6 power flying lifelinker?
Well, luckily, Avi did have a pair of Brazen Borrowers in his hand, so he would be able to put the Atraxa back in his own hand, but now he's just back to where he was a turn ago, being down a card and his opponent's up 4 cards.
Yeah, his opponent also just gets to take a Force of Will off of the Atraxa, and it's just going to be really hard to answer, to come back from this devastating whip position.
Yeah, it almost makes you wonder if going into Game 3, is Avi going to reconsider his sideboard plan and get some of those Atraxas out of there?
Yeah, it's pretty tough. We'll see how this game plays out, but it's certainly quite difficult. And even if you bounce your own Atraxa successfully, it's just gonna rot away in your own hand. You can't actually discard it. Like there's not a real card in these straight blue-black decks that allow you to discard cards from your own hand other than discarding the hand size. And so it's gonna stay in your hand for your opponent to grief reanimate you again and be even worse the next time.
Exactly.
It's just
I don't know. It almost makes me want to play some Careful Studies in this deck.
Yeah,
I miss those days of Reanimator.
I've seen some lists that have splashed red for Fable in these decks, so when you have these cards in your hand, you're more easily able to discard them, get them out of your hands, and then potentially reanimate them later. We do have to brainstorm into Surveil Land line available, though it is kind of tricky to set up sometimes, and it's just going to be a little bit slow, I think, trying to deal with this opposing Atraxa.
Yeah, especially it would have been slow if Atraxa was just a 6/7 with a wall of text of abilities.
Right.
But the fact that it also just drew a bunch of cards, I don't think it's going to be enough.
Yeah.
But just goes to show like the power of this Reanimator deck. There's so many ways that it can take advantage of what its own deck is doing and what the opponent's doing.
Yeah, this is a really important reason as to why we're playing Animate Dead and Reanimate, is so that we can take our opponent's things after we grief them. It's a really important part of how this deck plays, especially post-board. When your opponent has access to more graveyard hate, more ways to interact with the things that you're trying to do, and it's just something that happens when you try to leave in this Entomb stuff and get your own really powerful thing going on.
Yeah, because part of it is just like with the power creep of creatures over the last several years, almost every deck that runs creatures has something with a good enter the battlefield effect. So if you're able to get to a point where you just start taking your opponent's stuff, it's not like back in the day where, oh, I'm gonna reanimate your Nimble Mongoose.
Yeah.
It's like, no, I'm gonna take your grief. I'm gonna take your Atraxa. I'm gonna reanimate your Fury to kill your other Fury and your Goblin Welder. Alright, Force down, Brazen Borrower number 1 down. Still 1 left.
But the problem is Ian is still up cards on this exchange because that should be in the graveyard if it was forced. It does not go on adventure if it's countered. Just we're gonna have Ian quickly deal with that. Oh no, it's exiled under Doth. It's exiled under Drothy, that's what happens. Yeah. We're good. Yeah. Figured it out. Yeah. I figured it out right before you got there.
Yep.
We have the
just had to get my steps in for the day.
Yeah. Wouldn't want you to sit around. Alright. Ooh, we're gonna Brazen Borrow your opponent's Animate Dead. Put the Atraxa in the graveyard so you can try to reanimate it again.
You don't get this. I get this. Never mind, you get this back.
Yeah, no.
Yep,
Yeah,
that
yeah.
was gonna happen.
Yeah.
All right, hey, we get a game 3.
We sure do. We will see if Avi readjusts. You don't leave a Troxa in your deck if you don't also have a pile of Entombs in your deck. See if maybe some of this changes. He is on the play, but it is still kind of dangerous to go for it, as we saw in this game.
And he did. I did just see him take a single card out of his deck. I bet you $5 what it is.
Well, the problem is you're not if you don't want a Troxa in your deck, you're gonna have to take out 5 cards probably. You're gonna need the 4 Entombs and the 2 4 Entombs, the Troxa, and potentially the Archon if you didn't leave that one in as well. Just trimmed like one part of the combo, but it's just so dangerous to go for because you can just get
You can just get got.
Yeah.
Being on the play, though, is going to be very big in this matchup because you do have the Grief on turn 1, and then you're able to have your own Dazes for backup. So you can just get the first step in the mirror match.
Yeah. These decks having no mana cheating, unlike the traditional Reanimator decks, makes it really impactful to be on the play where you can potentially rip apart their hand multiple times before they have the option to play a Daze or make a single land drop. And it's just really hard to interact with that because you don't really want to Force of Will Thoughtseize. And then if you do have a Force of Will in hand, they get to take it off of their grief, and then you're just kind of left with nothing.
Yeah, and you want to Force of Will the Thoughtseize even less when there's a chance that they just do it again.
Right. It's just not really a winning strategy, and so person on the play is very important, especially in this matchup. Especially if you have access to that turn 1 grief, is one of the pivotal parts. But we didn't see it last game, so we saw a couple turns of each player setting up, some ponders, not too early griefs. There was a Dothy, it was bounced, and then we took the turn to go for it, and then the opponent had a track sign.
Yeah, there was a lot more positioning before they started to pick a fight.
Right, and if either player has the turn 1 grief, that positioning doesn't normally happen as much.
Alright, let's see if Avi's keeping his 6 here. He's definitely putting a lot of thought into this one.
Yeah.
Because you kind of have to weigh the odds of getting a decent 5 versus having worse cards for your opponent to grief out of your hand.
Yeah, it's really hard. This deck is not a deck that likes going to 5. You just have so many pitch cards. You have a lot of things that you want to be doing. Basic Swamp is not the ideal turn 1.
That's not the worst turn 1, though.
Yeah, but when your opponent has access to grief and pitches a reanimate, so almost certainly has a backup.
There's Animate Dead, ×2, Wasteland, Brainstorm Ponder.
Oh. I would be shocked if there wasn't the follow-up reanimate on the grief here.
Man, some would say you know what you're talking about sometimes.
Yeah, it's just... Reanimate is such a strong card of this matchup that it's just kind of insane to pitch one without having the backup one.
Alright, see if Avi's going to try to fight over some of the mana here. Because there's a very good chance that Ian just kept like a turn 1 Grief Scam hand plus a Ponder.
Well, the thing is, your opponent isn't actually doing anything. They have Basic Swamp and 2 blue cards in hand, which don't interact very well with each other. And even if there was no follow-up land, like, you're still going to be attacking for 3 for a while until your opponent can draw out of it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you do get to a point where like the Tempo Wasteland is only really good when you're ahead.
Right.
When you're playing from behind, they don't really get too many other options here.
Yeah.
Looks like this game is running away from Avi pretty quickly, unfortunately.
He has some opportunities to draw out of it, depending on the nature of Ian's hand. We really have no idea what Ian's hand is at this point. Is kind of the strange thing about it. There's such a wide array of cards that could be in there. could be a daze. There could be a force. All right, there
There
is
is
a
a daze.
daze.
And that one feels even worse because not only did you take 4 damage to cast the Dismember, it didn't resolve, so you also take 3 on the attack.
Yeah, it's
How does it feel to time walk yourself?
it doesn't feel great. You kind of have to cast it and just hope that there's nothing on the other side.
It's like you can't beat it if they have anything, so hope they
Yeah.
have nothing.
No. It's just desperation mode here from Avi. This Underground Sea not going to stick around for very long, I would have to imagine. You know he doesn't have a third land coming, so just deny the blue mana as much as you possibly can here. Just going to take a miracle for Avi to come out back in this one.
Yeah, because I'll be honest, I'm not sure what he could draw off this Ponder to really get back in it.
If he hits exactly land plus Bowmasters in the top 2 cards, it's possible, I guess.
Like,
If
it's usually non-fetch land in
yeah,
into Bowmaster.
or yes, Wasteland into Bowmaster, and your opponent has literally nothing. It's not a great, it's not an enviable position to be in.
It definitely is not. And, yep, that'll do it. Ian Marshall takes the Scaminator mirror match 2-1, and that is such a grindy matchup.
Yeah, to some extent, like, players' hands are just kind of torn apart sometimes. Sometimes they have a while to draw out of it. You saw that in game 1. Both players had some options to draw. Ian just didn't see the cards he was looking for. Game 2, it was pretty close. Both players were setting up for a little bit. And then Ian found the tracks of Avi's and then just ran away with it. And in game 3, both players had some chances to draw some cards. Avi needed to draw a couple more lands than he did to get out of the mulligan. And you just never really found anything, and the one grief just went the distance.
As it will when you tear apart your opponent's hand. Yeah. All right, we are going to see if we can get another matchup onto the screen, potentially maybe get a game 3 of another winning in. We'll see what we can find out there, but otherwise we will see you back here for our top 8. We got 3 more rounds of Legacy coming up. We will crown a winner. We will give away a chicken, and we are going to have a great next 3 rounds.
All right. See you then.
All right, everybody, we are here with your top 8, and I'm joined now by not Adam. I'm joined by my good buddy Dom Hrezik. How's it going, buddy?
Good, man. How are you?
Doing all right. We've been talking about getting you in the booth for a little bit, and so I figured you're actually down here for an event, so we might as well get you in.
Absolutely. Yeah, I'm happy to be here, getting over the being salty after kind of scrubbing out a little bit, but ended up 3-3, so can't complain too much.
Hey, and like you said, that's 3 more wins than you've had the last couple of months.
Yeah, I'm trying not to say that too many times.
All right, so we have our top 8 ready to go. On camera, we are going to have Ian Marshall back versus Brendan Layne, and we got another Reanimator Scaminator. The rest of the top 8, second seed was Brian Coval, third seed Carey Banyas, fourth seed Gabriel Abadi playing against David Larsen, the fifth seed, Patrick Green at number 6, and number 7 was Pat Plastic. I'm sorry, Pat. I completely butchered that.
Pat H.
Pat H. We'll go with that.
Pat H. As someone with an also H last name, I'm Dom H. That's how that works.
All right. So we got what's going to shape up to probably be a very grindy match right now. Did you run to this deck at all today, Dom?
No, but it was all around me.
That's not too surprising. There's been a lot of times where I've seen like Scaminators going back and forth, and just like I'm walking past and somebody's reanimating somebody else's stuff.
Yeah. Do we know how many of these we have in the top 8?
I believe there are actually potentially 3 in the top 8. I don't have all the deck lists in front of me.
I think Coval might have been on it.
Yeah, because we have both of these guys. We have Brian Coval, so I know we have at least 3.
Okay.
But with Ian here on the play, we're going to see if he's got one of the very scary turn 1 double grief draws, or if he's going to go for more of a slow start and just cast a Ponder.
Let's see. Is that one of the 8-bit lands?
See, that's why I thought earlier too, but that's what he's using for his Underground Seas.
Perfect.
I wish that they had put Underground Seas in the 8-bit secret layers. Man, that'd be nice.
That'd be crazy.
All right, so we do have a Ponder coming through here, and pretty quick keep. But this is also kind of a matchup where you kind of just want resources. So as long as the deck kind of functions, you don't really care for too much else.
Yeah, like you talked about it being a little more grindy and stuff. It's interesting seeing that these decks can go from so aggressive when it has to, full gas down, and then being able to take the time and gather resources and grind out when it needs to be.
Yeah, that's one of the reasons why you enjoy playing land so much.
Absolutely, yeah. I was able to make 2020s pretty fast today, but also I won a game with 5 or 6 zombies from my Field of the Dead. That's my pet card though. So
yeah, I'll be honest. If I saw you playing a deck without that in it, I would be concerned.
It's so fun.
So Brendan's cycling a troll for a basic swamp. So he's playing around wastelands out of Ian a little bit, but he does have the grief pitching the animate dead there. So we'll see if Ian lets us resolve or if they're going to be a little bit of a fight over it. With the fetch coming in here, I feel like there might be a Orcish Bowmasters coming down.
Let's see that. What do you think is the most pitched card to Legacy?
The most pitched to grief. At this point, I feel like it probably has to be a Reanimate.
Really?
Just because over the last couple of months and couple of years since Grief's come out, it's usually just been in Reanimator decks.
That's fair.
But that would be, man, I wish there could be some kind of statistic for that. Because that's the kind of number that like the nerd in me loves.
Right? Yeah.
All right, looks like he is just gonna let this resolve.
Okay.
And we got 2 pair. We got 2 anime deads. We have 2 dazes with a force and a bowmasters coming in. This is one of those weird griefs where like you really want to take the anime dead. but it doesn't do anything.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of, there's so much redundancy in Ian's hand. Like, the most important spell, you just can't shut it off.
Yeah.
Let's see what the follow-up is going to be here. I'm not expecting much of a follow-up. It's going to be Reanimate, Hardcast Days number 1, Pitchcast Days number 2.
Yeah.
And
Just try and clear out some stuff, huh?
Yeah, just try to clear it up. We'll see if Ian just jams his own Animate Dead, which I figure you have to. And there's a troll coming. So we'll see if Brendan has any good answer to the troll here, because unfortunately that's a very difficult creature to block. Even if he's managed to find and reanimate one of his own trolls. Still needs 2 more creatures.
I was going to say, because it's not Menace on that one, right?
It's super Menace. He'd be blocked by 3 creatures.
Yeah. How long until they come up with the evergreen word for that?
I hope that there's not enough cards. Alright, troll coming in, crashing in for 5? No. 4? 4, 6?
I think so.
3. Coming in for 3.
Some number. Mathing.
Until I haven't played a lot against this deck. Keep playing against all of the like Grim Monolith combo decks when I play on Magic Online. There's a 6/5. Okay, so coming in for 5.
Yeah.
So many numbers. You'd think I was an accountant. except for the fact that I am, and I'm still screwing up all these numbers.
It's okay.
Grief coming in. Troll is going to get cycled in response. Force Will gets eaten. And that is going to be one of the Surveil lands to hand, just to get a little bit of extra value.
Yep.
If he doesn't concede to the second
there we
troll,
go.
that's reasonable. Alright, and that is game 1 going to Ian Marshall here. And similar to what we kind of saw in our last round of Swiss, the Reanimator deck on the play has a definite advantage.
Yeah.
So going into game 2, because all these Reanimator decks have a smaller Entomb package. So a lot of them will play 1 Atraxa, 1 Archon, and then 4 Entombs. When we watched this matchup with Ian versus Avi last round, Avi kept in his Atraxas in game 2, and then died when Ian reanimated.
Yeah.
So I'm hoping that Brendan doesn't make the same mistake.
Yeah.
But we will definitely have to see how he wants to sideboard for this matchup.
Yeah, I think it's just like before, like we talked about it. These decks are able to kind of grind out, but it's picking and choosing when to use your resources. And I think that, Brendan was able to kind of see what was in Ian's hand, but it was because there was that redundancy. I think that's what ended up letting Ian take that one, take it on home.
100%. So we're going to have to, for Brendan, he's going to have to hope that when he gets his opening draw, he's able to break apart what Ian's doing more.
Mm-hmm.
Because, getting those griefs where it's just like, it doesn't matter what I take. It doesn't affect anything. This feels really bad.
Absolutely.
So players are shuffling up from sideboarding here. Hopefully we end up having a bit more of a interactive game.
Right.
Alright, and we did put the Scaminator on because we like putting the 1 seed on. They've earned their spot at the table. But we have plenty more matches coming, and there are plenty of people not on this deck. So we're going to watch one scam deck kind of eat the other, and then we can see what they run into after this.
Right.
Because I can guarantee whatever we put on next is not going to be another scam deck. I don't have the full list of the top 8 decks. I do know that first and second seed both were the Scaminator. Not sure what Carey was on. I know Gabe was playing at least green-white. I'm not sure of the splash color, but he is playing Depths. David Lance playing mono-red. Patrick Green at number 6 is playing 4-color Control. And I'm not sure what Pat is on either, but we will take a look around. If one of them makes it through, we might be able to find a spicy little matchup.
Mm-hmm.
All right, 7's coming in. And this kind of feels like a matchup where, similar to like the old modern Jund mirrors, if it's a remotely functional 7, you have to snap keep it.
Yeah.
There's just so many different times where, especially with Grief now, I'm getting rid of my own cards in order to get a little bit of tempo. Oh, but it looks like Brendan was on 6 anyway. Both of them are on 6.
Yeah, I think we were there.
All right, so there's
Right
not going to
into
be not going to be a whole bunch going on, I don't think. Let's see. Ian might be just leading off the ponder here with the quick fetch. Just try to sculpt his hand a little more and figure out when he's going to pick this fight.
Right. Now, for what you've seen so far, is this kind of like the old modern Jund list where you take out some of the discard as well? Or the Griefs, because they're the creatures that you're reanimating, you just keep those in and keep running it?
As much as I would like to be able to take out discard spells in these super grindy mirrors where it's just terrible top deck,
Yeah.
the impact of Eternal and Grief, especially like Grief into a reanimate, is just so huge.
Mm-hmm.
Like, if you're on the play and you're able to go turn 1, pitch a Grief, look at your opponent's hand of 1 land, troll, and 2 drops.
Mm-hmm.
You take their troll, you reanimate it right away.
Yeah.
They are on such a back foot.
Absolutely. That makes sense.
Right.
It definitely seems like these lists have just been more and more shaved down to where it's just like streamlined.
Mm-hmm.
That's the word I was trying to come up
Proud of you, you figured it out. But yeah, there's just been so many different cards coming in, so many like new tools that it's like just the inevitable power creep of the fact that there's more cards coming out.
Absolutely.
Is going to make decks like this more and more streamlined and just more impactful.
Now, we see one of the surveil lines, surveil, I don't know why I said that. That was my accent coming out, sorry. One of the surveil lands coming into play. Have you been seeing those a lot today?
We've seen them mostly in this deck.
Okay.
Because there's a lot of...
Speak of Grief, here we go.
Speaking of Grief. There's a lot of little tricks that you can pull off with these surveil lands, especially in a brainstorm format.
Okay.
So if you're sitting there and you have your Atraxa in your hand game 1, I'm going to fetch, put the surveil land into play, brainstorm in response to the trigger. Hey, look, there's an Atraxa on top of my deck. I would love to put that in my graveyard. And now I'll untap and put it into play.
Yeah. Okay.
So there's a lot of very effective ways to use it in a deck like this.
Mm-hmm.
But like I play one of the surveil lands in a deck like Death and Taxes.
Yeah. Because
there's a lot of times where I don't really have a turn 1 play, or if I'm holding up a fetch land and a Stoneforge activation. It's almost free to be able to get this extra surveil in there. Especially since if you can get a dead card off the top of your deck, it's almost like drawing a card.
Yeah, that's huge.
Alright, Brendan's Grief takes away a Orcish Bowmasters. And we are going to... it's a Wasteland on the Black Source. Does Brendan have the backup land? Technically, yes, he has the backup land. Unfortunately, not the one he wanted.
See, capitalize. It seems like there's such a small margin of errors with these decks that you're able to play with, and just being able to kind of close in and really stomp out the deck that stumbles first.
Especially if you get to a point where you realize that that decision that you made on turn 2 affects the game on turn 18.
Absolutely.
And it's very hard to figure out, okay, where did I go wrong?
Yeah.
Or did I go wrong? because so many of these decks have just such powerful cards that you could still play it perfectly correctly.
Absolutely.
All right, Animate Dead coming in, Grief coming in, card going away. All right, so Brendan did leave in at least some part of the Entomb package. Unfortunately, there's not a lot going on with the Daisy you can't cast and an Entomb you can't cast. But he does have a lot of time, though, right now, because just attacking for 2 every turn is not the most impressive stat. Attacking for 5, however, it's a little better.
Yeah, and it turns out Woodwalker there has a little bit more text on it as well.
It definitely does. It can turn that Reanimate in Brendan's hand into Give my opponent my best creature.
It's fair.
I don't think he wants to cast that.
No, I don't think so.
Although there could be a time where he wants to just cast it just to try to thin the deck out a little bit, if he even gets to the point of being able to cast it.
Oof.
Oh, that's a Bowmaster's coming back. Yeah, this is very quickly slipping away from Brendan here, I think. 16 to 16, but then an attack for 5 coming in. This is a 2-turn clock.
Yeah, turns out.
He found the land. I don't think it's going to be enough, though.
I don't think so. Unfortunately.
So let's see if Ian has any follow-up, or are we just going to hold up some interaction here? And that is the match. Ian Marshall takes down Brendan Layne, and yeah, sorry folks, scam on to the semifinals.
Oh no.
We will take a look to see if we can get another match up on our screen here. We'll be back shortly if we can find one, and if not, we will be back with the semifinals in a little bit.
All right, everyone. We are back. We were able to get a game 3. Gonna have Patrick Green on 4-color control versus Carey Banyas on Rhinos.
And you are welcome. We don't have a scam mirror. At least, and we won't until at earliest the finals.
Okay.
All right, so Carey was able to take down game 1 of this matchup, and then game 2, Patrick, when I walked over there, he was casting multiple leyline bindings into a solitude, and Carey had had enough and wanted to stop playing that game.
That's understandable, you know? Sometimes you just have enough and you just step away.
But with Rhinos going to be on the play this game, there are some scary starts that he can have, especially with running upwards of 7, 8 Spirit Guides.
Absolutely. Yeah. So, is it still Teamer Rhinos then?
It is still Teamer Rhinos. Okay. They're running pretty much the same things that you were seeing in Modern up until this week.
Yeah. Okay.
It is Shardless Agent and Violent Outburst. Main deck, Magus of the Moons or Blood Moons sometimes. Really, there's a lot of different ways that you can play this deck. The core package of mana, Cascaders, and Rhinos is just so tight. You can kind of play whatever you really want.
Yeah. Fair enough. And I think this is something that's been talked about before is the idea that I understand we're playing with proxies and stuff now, but for the players that were playing Modern and had their Rhinos lists, they could take that and upgrade it and then get into another format of Legacy. And I think that's really something to say when the cards are utilized across those different formats.
Very much so. It's kind of like similar to how when Death Shadow started popping up more in Legacy.
Mm-hmm.
There was a lot of Modern players who had their Death Shadow decks.
Absolutely.
And when you can upgrade and play another format for the cost of what? 4 Force of Wills and some reanimates. Yeah, there's not much that you really need to do to be able to access these new formats. Like the jump from Modern to Legacy is a lot smaller than the jump from, say, like Pioneer to Modern, or Standard to Pioneer.
Especially now with the card pool being so huge. I feel like looking at some of the lists for Modern, the price is what Legacy decks were, but alright, here we go.
And there's assigned basic forest.
I think that's the Post Malone forest. Yeah, Posty.
Alright, and then we got a cycle of Alluring Revealed here for a Volcanic Island. This is another one of those decks where the cycle of cycle lands kind of just has really improved.
Yeah.
Because the Trolls and Scam, the Alluring Revealed, in both of these decks, both players are playing at least a couple copies of them.
Absolutely.
Just being able to play all of these extra spells in place of lands, but without ruining your mana base is huge.
For sure.
And Beans.
The Beans.
It's a card I wish I could still play in Modern, but... Well, we got a Force Will coming in. Just deciding what to pitch here. It's going to be a Shardless Agent, so you got to assume he's got a backup.
I think so.
Certainly hope so. There's another land coming in. Taiga.
Now, I guess for this matchup for the Rhino seat, is it something where you just try and fire it off as soon as possible, or do you try and wait for the perfect moment where the 4-color control's shields might be down? Well, I guess we're going for it here.
I think you pretty much have to just fire it when you can.
Yeah.
Because there's a lot of times where you're just looking at what your opponent's got going on, and yeah, the shields might be down right now, but you're not killing them necessarily with this. It's just a value game. You got to try to tax the resources when you can, and just get to a point where did he board them all out? They're in there somewhere, I hope. Otherwise, this is gonna be a short game. There we go. We found it. But like I was saying, the shields might be down for right now.
Yeah.
but Patrick could very easily untap, draw Terminus, return, and just wipe it.
For sure.
So you just have to get your points in when you can. Other than playing Euro or Triumph of St. Catherine, Patrick doesn't have a ton of life gain that's going to be persistent life gain.
Mm.
Like sometimes, yeah, you can chump block with a Solitude after it eats another Rhino.
Yeah.
But yeah, you kind of just need to go for it and get your chips in while you can. That is my favorite Rhino token I've ever seen. His name is Isaac.
That's awesome.
That is beautiful. All right, Carey crashing in. Patrick going down to 12. And now we're going to get to the spot where we kind of have to just figure out what does Patrick have available. Ooh. And does he have an answer for this? The answer is probably, but maybe.
Yeah.
You are right. That is a immaculate Rhino token.
Absolutely.
All right, so there's Brainstorm coming in. If he has a force, you have to assume he's firing it off. I don't think he has a force. Yeah, this is kind of where Rhinos definitely wants to be. Similar to in Modern.
It's more of that like 1-2 punch. It's having the creatures on board and then that secondary. Oh.
Yep, it's having the disruption and pressure. You got the pressure out of the Rhinos, and you got the Blood Moon for the disruption.
Patrick targeting the better Rhino token. Gonna get rid of that one.
Gotta show him who's boss.
That's right.
All right. Ooh, and there's another one coming in, and that is
All
going
right,
to be the match. All right. That's kind of Rhinos is what Rhinos does, I guess.
Good cards are good.
True. It turns out being able to just instant speed a couple of 4/4s is pretty solid.
Absolutely.
And I guess I can see why they banned that in Modern.
I was gonna say. I think we understand why that card was taken care of this past week.
Because really, if you're looking at it, the only difference between this and the Modern version is the mana base, Force of Will, and Spirit Guides.
But yeah.
All the spells are the same. So there is a ton of interaction that is just good to have, like Mystical Disputes.
Absolutely.
Like, that card is insane if you're able to just 1 mana to just get them.
But I think it's interesting too. We're honestly not that long ago, Simian Spirit Guide was still in Modern too.
It was.
So exactly, it was the mana base and the Force of Wills that were the difference between those two decks. And I mean, we saw the strength of it in Modern, and we're seeing still carrying over to the strength of it in Legacy as well.
Yeah, for sure. So we will be back in a couple of minutes. We will have our semifinals. Unfortunately, one of them will be Scam. I'm sorry. But the other one will be different. So we'll be able to get a bit more interactive gameplay, but non-interactive gameplay. I don't know. We'll see what happens.
We'll see what happens, you know?
But we'll be back in a couple more minutes. Stick around.
All right. Right into the next round.
We got Rhinos back, baby. And unfortunately, we got Scam. But we got Brian Coval.
Hey!
So, you win some, you lose some. We tried to get Brian on camera earlier today, but unfortunately, it was during our internet don't work rounds. But we got him on now, and he is, unfortunately for Carey, starting off with a grief scam on turn 1.
Right into it. Let's do this.
Carey's thinking. He lets him take the force. Let's see, we got the Seiju, Simian Spirit Guide, Force Luring Revealed, Brazen Borrower, Shardless Agent, and a card you don't want in your opening hand. But at the same time, starting with a green source and just like suspending that is not a bad actual start here, I don't think.
No, I mean, it has a clock, Obviously, the opponent's going to see it while it ticks down, but I used to play Living In back in the day before we had all these high-fangled new creatures and whatnot. They gave us Desert Ceradon. I was rejoicing, so I totally get just taking one of those down and making your opponent have something.
Yep. All right, Force Will gets taken here. Does he have the follow-up on the Reanimate? Looking like it's probably a no on that. Going back over to Carey, kind of have to decide between, do you cycle the Lorien Revealed and try to get the land? Or do you just suspend? And he does just suspend. Because he does have the backup. If he does draw a blue source, you can just pitch that Spirit Guide and go for a... That's not good. He can go for a Shardless Agent. But I think Brian Coval's going for a Trexa.
Probably. That card is pretty solid.
Hey, look. There it is.
There it is.
Yeah, that card has kind of taken multiple formats by storm. Like, I'm casting it in Standard.
Yeah.
Still pretty good.
Yeah, turns out.
When he casts it for, 1 mana, even better.
Yeah. Refill your hand.
Okay, starting with a Ponder here. I did catch a glimpse of a Reanimate in Brian's hand. They're both standing up. That's just the camera illusion with the chair behind him. Alright, he does have the second land here. Is going to go for that Reanimate. Because there's only one card that Carey has that Brian doesn't know about. Was it a Force of something? It was not. This might get rough.
Yeah. I just think this deck is just so well-rounded.
Yeah. 7/7, Flying Vigilant, Lifelink, Death Touch, draw 5. That seems pretty good.
What is the card Carey's looking at now?
I'll be honest, it's a card I don't remember the name of because I am really bad with card names. But it is a blue-black mobile spell. Yes, Whale of the Forgotten. I knew it was something of the blank, but I couldn't quite think of what it was.
Something of the blank, heard.
So it is a new modal spell.
Okay.
It is interaction. It is card draw. So Whale of the Forgotten. I will just get the full text on this card. But it is blue-black for a sorcery. Choose one. If there's 8 or more permanent cards in your graveyard as you cast it, you can choose 1 or more instead. Return target non-land permanent to its owner's hand. Target opponent discards a card. Look at the top 3 of your deck. Put 1 into your hand and the rest in your graveyard. So not only does it help to dig, it also can answer opposing Atraxas if you wanted to.
Yeah.
And it can also, when you have all of these extra cards in your graveyard because you've been playing a long and grindy game, like, this card just says, bounce your thing, make you discard it, I will draw a card and put a reanimation target in my graveyard.
Yeah.
Like, this card has been very solid in a lot of these blue-black decks. Honestly, in every format. Alright, Carey goes for a cycle on the Rhino there. He is going to ice to tap down the Atraxa. Which is kind of interesting because he does have the Brazen Borrower. But if Brian is going to blow a force to try to get through some damage, he would much rather have the Fire Ice be the one to get countered.
Mm-hmm.
Now, unfortunately, that Wasteland taking him off the blue source. Yeah, that's pretty brutal there. Getting the grief to come back as well. So Brian Coval with a quick 1-0 over Carey here. But this is the part of the game where Carey can forward into a lot more interaction.
Mm-hmm.
I know that we saw last round there were some mystical disputes that he has access to, which admittedly not the best against the black half of Brian Coval's deck with griefs and animates and everything.
Mm-hmm.
But just being able to force through a little bit of action through a force of will or anything like that could be worth bringing in. Brian also seems to be a little heavy on non-basics because the mana in this deck is just so tight.
Yeah.
Like, if you can just sneak a Blood Moon in there, there's a chance that you can steal a game, which is what we saw him do against Patrick last round.
Yeah, I definitely think trying to time it up, from the Rhinos' point of view, being able to maybe land that fast threat and then follow it up with, like you said, a Blood Moon or something like that, or maybe more threats. I don't know. It seems real difficult when you have the discard spells coming from Brian's trying to do, and then just being able to so mana efficient. 1 or 2 mana, and then you're bringing out these huge threats, and especially like we just saw with Atraxa, being able to refill the whole grip and then keep going from there. It's wild.
Yeah, because there's all these different ways that you're negative resourcing yourself with griefs and with like pitching cards to force a will. But then, yeah, you get one good refill and you're off to the races.
Absolutely, yeah.
Because let's be honest, Atraxa, if you reanimate it, you're making your reanimate into a draw 4 or a draw 5, and then sometimes you get a 7/7. Like, it is the card draw on it is huge.
Absolutely.
Because if you think back with cards like Grizzlebrand,
mm-hmm.
you're paying the life in order to draw the cards.
Like it's so far away.
I mean, hey, in decks like this, like the 2 extra creatures that are better than him,
yeah,
it's a lot. Because you got to figure pre-Avacyn Restored, people playing Jingataxis.
Well,
which, if you couldn't kill your opponent in time, you were going to deck yourself.
Yeah.
Then you go and you get Grizzlebrand, quote unquote, the best creature ever printed, which, admittedly, pretty up there still.
Still pretty damn good.
But how many times have you seen, like, I'm going to draw 7 cards off of this Grizzlebrand,
mm-hmm.
and then your opponent bounces it, or they just find a way to answer it, and then they just attack, and then you're at 6 life because you were playing against Delver.
Yep.
And then all of a sudden, you can't draw more cards in your Grizzlebrand.
Yeah.
Atraxa not having to pay that extra 7 life is huge, especially when you're going for a turn 1 or turn 2 reanimate.
For sure. Yeah, it's like it shored up. It took away the bad part of reanimate,
Exactly.
like, which is crazy to think of.
And plus, you always used to kind of have to decide, do I attack with the Grizzlebrand and then draw cards? Or do I attack, or do I just hold back?
Mm-hmm.
You had to make your decision on how was I going to leverage this being a lifelinker. Atraxa, you get the best of both worlds because you can attack and block with it.
Yeah.
You admittedly get a few less cards, but you're able to use the resources much better, I think. Like in the average game if you're using Atraxa.
Mm-hmm.
Alright, both players looking at their opening hands. See if they're keeping. Looks like Carey's going back in, Brian's going back.
Mm-hmm.
Which, honestly, I'm not sure which of the 2 decks favors more, but I feel like Carey is going to be advantaged if they're both mulling low.
I think it's interesting because I think Rhinos, obviously they're going first. That's going to be big. Brian mulliganing down, but then he's going to draw back up to 7. But if he uses a grief kind of a thing, I'm sure someone out there is smarter than me to where, well, we know people are smarter than me, first off, but they can crunch these numbers and try and figure it out. And I definitely don't think it's a point where, like, if you won the die roll and you chose to go second, but it's just very interesting to see.
Yes, this is game 2 of the semifinals with Brian being up a game. I will be honest, between running back and forth, trying to set up the feature match and hopping back to do commentary, just forgot to switch that up. Unfortunately, we are down a producer today. He had to go be a family man, which is understandable. No shade against him. But, the guy who's usually a lot more on top of it than I am, unfortunately wasn't here today. But don't worry, I promise you, I will forget to change it for the finals.
So we got Brian going to 5. Looks like Carey kept to 6.
And there's plenty of hands that Brian can have on 5 where he just doesn't want to have only 5 cards because you keep a grief, you're already mulliganing.
Absolutely.
So there's a lot of times where, like, mulling low in this scam deck is just, you can't cast the spells that you keep as efficiently.
Mm-hmm.
And then if Carey has interaction for it, then just kind of all fall apart pretty quickly.
Yeah.
Whereas with Carey, he only needs 3 mana sources and a Cascader.
Yeah.
And that alone can win the game.
And some of that mana can just be spirit guides in their hand.
Yeah. Like, there is, in theory, a 6 where Carey just casts a Violent Outburst right now. I don't think it's going to necessarily happen.
Yeah.
But it is definitely an option for him. Yeah. All right, we got a Surveil land for value.
Do you know how many, like, the Rhino decks are running on average in Legacy?
In Legacy, I have seen
2?
anywhere between 0 and 2.
Okay.
Modern is usually 2.
Yeah.
But there's so many times where, similar to, like, when I play them Death and Taxes, there's a lot of times where it's just, I'm not doing anything with this mana, so I'll just get one of these.
Yeah.
And the Rhinos deck is so full of 3-drops. Yeah, there's no reason not to play these lands.
Yeah. Especially if it's a slower deck, like you just said. Being able to take your time and kind of sculpt what you need.
Yeah, it wouldn't surprise me if he ended up going and just fetching another one right now.
Mm-hmm.
Coval with a Wasteland doesn't fire it off right now, which to me either says I'm going to hit a land after Carey figures out what he's doing, or I'm holding a Bowmasters.
It looked like in his hand I think I saw a Force of Will and a Force of Negation. So he might just be kind of some force flooded there. Entirely sure. Yep.
Does go for the Wasteland here. Probably at end of turn, I would assume. Could
Makes
be
sense.
upkeep. Figure it out.
Always love a good upkeep. Wasteland.
Upkeep Wasteland is quite nice.
Yeah.
Although I will be honest, my favorite Wasteland is Wasteland your fetch land in response to your Brainstorm.
That's fair.
Yeah, so this is a full proxy event. Buffalo Chicken Dip, for all of the local events that we do, we end up doing full proxy. Ooh, and he just has the Violent Outburst anyway. But yeah, we do full proxy for all of the events, and it really opens up a lot of the format to people who really couldn't otherwise play it. Like, we've seen a lot of matches on camera today where People had a entire. Oh my god.
Oh, I was wondering if this was coming in.
Oh, that makes me so happy. Please let it resolve. This is my absolute favorite thing to cascade into. Inevitable Betrayal was in a lot of my sideboards when I played these. Oh no, the days. Oh, that just feels bad. Ooh. Force negation, because we are on Brian's turn. Oh, we've got to fight.
Brian have 4 cards in hand, I believe.
Ooh, and that does resolve. I'll hop out and make sure that the days is exiled. But I think Carey's having a little bit of fun here.
Yeah. All right, we got that days figured out.
All right, and that Archon of Cruelty is honestly one of my favorite things that you can actually steal with a
It's so
Inevitable
good.
Betrayal.
I think we were just talking about this card the other day. Sorry, saying that this was a crazy upgrade for the Reanimator decks, just because Caracas was like supposed to be one of the surefire ways to kind of beat that deck, and then there's this card that doesn't give a damn about your Caracas.
Yeah. Oh, you're gonna untap me? Okay, I did my job.
Yeah, right. All right.
Yep.
There we
All
go.
right, we
Game
got
3.
game 3 coming. I will be honest, I was not expecting to see Inevitable Betrayals, but I am so glad that is in the sideboard. It is one of my favorite cards to cascade into in any format.
Now, is that something that Brian's going to kind of go back with during sideboard and kind of adjust to? Or is it just knowledge that he has going into, it's either going to be Rhinos or they're going to be taking something from his deck?
So it's a little interesting because you have to look at it where if the Inevitable Betrayal is what's getting hit, then you want to take out a lot of the bigger, scarier threats like the Archon and the Atraxa.
Mm-hmm.
Alternatively, if there's still Rhinos in the deck, then you want to have these Atraxas because they can hold down the ground all day.
Mm-hmm.
So you don't really know what's going to happen here.
Yeah.
And it's kind of like 3D chess when they're playing between each other, trying to figure out, what do I keep in? What do you keep in? What should I do?
Absolutely. This is the part of sideboarding that can be extremely stressful, but very fun.
Very much so. Wow, looks like we've got a decent crowd showing up here.
All right.
Thank you very much for the 2 raids. We are currently in the semifinals right now. Got to update the thing at the bottom of the screen. But we have a whole other round after this. We've got a game 3 coming right now. We have some of the absolute best legacy I'd say in Ohio, but let's be honest, there's people who've been traveling for a while to get here.
Absolutely.
All right. We are going to have Brian Coval on the play here. See if he can keep a 7 this time. He was on that 5 last time, which definitely doesn't feel good.
No.
Yeah, we are in game 3, so we will see who makes it onto the finals.
Absolutely.
The other side of the bracket is Ian Marshall on Scaminator versus Gaby Body on Dark Depths pile.
Mm-hmm.
Gabe's been on that deck for a long time. I've seen him play many builds of it.
Absolutely.
I assume he's on Abzan today. But I'll be honest, every time I walk past, usually just had a 20/20 in like a forest. So we'll have to see what he's playing on if he ends up making it to the finals. No, the depths player is not casting Sloth. We did have one on camera earlier. Unfortunately, it wasn't in play, but I did see it when he was de-sideboarding.
Okay. That card seems wild. I picked mine up the other day. I was gonna try and play it for this tournament, but just didn't end up coming together.
But I will say there was a match earlier. Unfortunately, it was while our internet was kind of choppy. But we had a turn 1 Dark Depths kill on the play, which was kind of nasty.
All right, here we go. Right into it. Looks like Carey was on a Mulda 6.
We're not talking about Blocks Diamond. We're talking about the new Fallout card. There's a Mega Sloth is an 8/8 with Trample that costs 1 less for each permanent or each counter among all permanents and all players. So if you have a Dark Depths in play with 10 counters on it, it is green for an 8/8 with Trample, which is a very scary turn 2 threat.
Absolutely.
Oh my is right. All right, and yeah, that's a very good start. Taking away the endurance to turn the reanimator on, and taking away the violent outburst to turn off the Rhinos. But one key thing to point out here, he did pitch the Atraxa to the Grief. So if Carey does end up cascading into an inevitable betrayal again, he's not going to get the Atraxa. But if he gets an Archon, I think he's okay with it.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, we got the second land there from Carey. And we are at the spot where he could have a Spirit Guide into a Cascader pretty much at any point.
We did have a Spirit Guide in his hand. Brian looked at it.
And I think I might have caught a glimpse of a Violent Outburst, but I'm not 100% sure here. That looks like an Enemy Dead trying to come down for this Endurance. Just get a little bit more pressure into play. Fetch lane coming in. I have to assume this is a Charlotte's agent.
That makes sense.
All right, I guess we just got to see what this Cascade's gonna hit.
Do we know how many cards Brian has in hand?
I'm not quite sure, but
3 maybe?
I would assume probably around 3, just because pitching the cards to the Grief always. Hey, didn't even need to go for it. Question is this going to resolve? That's a Force Negation. Does Carey pick up? He did pick up a Force of Will on the blue card. So the question now is that Archon still in the deck? Guess we will find out in a moment. Whatever there is, though, I hope for Carey's sake. Yep, there's
the Archon.
Oh, love that card. Oh, and he discards the Brazen Borrower, too. I have to assume there's another one. Unless that was... Or actually, if that was his only card in hand.
Possibly. I think if he had 3, then force pitching Murktide.
Alright, shuffle, shuffle, shuffle. Guess we gotta see what this is coming off the top.
Yeah, right? But yes, the Buffalo Chicken Dip Legacy events are proxy friendly. And just like it said before, the tournament prize outs are in actual Legacy cards. So it's a great way to be able to come in, try some different things out, and if you do well, you're able to start building up a legacy pool of these cards, and you can either keep them and build the decks that you want there, or try to sell it and, you know, form what you want.
Yeah, being able to get to a spot where you can earn a legacy deck by doing well playing legacy is a big reason why Rob started doing these events the way he did in the first place. That Archon got there because it inevitably betrayed Brian Coval. Alright, Wasteland coming in, triggering the Archon here. I don't know if there's a draw that can get Brian out of this, I'll be honest. And this is game 3, so we might have Rhinos going to the finals here. Yep.
Oh, wow.
And yeah, Rhinos does Rhinos things. That is... oh my god. I absolutely love Inevitable Betrayal, and I am very glad to see it taking a spot in another format.
That is awesome. I think it's awesome to see the resiliency of Rhinos as well. It's not just an all-in combo deck.
No, exactly.
He was able to get smacked around with that first grief, and then it being reanimated again, 2 cards being pulled out, and then still able to come back.
All right. Well, we will get the finals to you in a little bit. We still not sure what happened in the other semifinals here, but whatever it is, we will get it to you shortly. We'll have Rhinos versus either Scam again or versus Depths, and we'll see what happens. Back in a little bit.
Absolutely. All right. Looks like we are getting all set. Ian's heading back here to the booth with me. We got Scam versus Rhinos again. These players are playing for first place is going to receive a revised Volcanic Island, but more importantly, their name on the Golden Chicken Trophy. Second place is going to receive a revised Tundra, so that is what's on the line.
The top 4 ended up walking away with Badlands. Top 8 got Ancient Tombs. And Force Will's top 16.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
we have a bunch of legacy stables that we do give out as prizes.
100%. Oh, we're already in it. Wow.
We are,
all right.
we are in it.
I like this. Not wasting any time. Yeah, it was a good field of, was it 62? I think we had a couple people kind of drop last minute.
Yep, a couple people couldn't make it, so we did have 62. But still, 62 people to show up and play Paper Legacy. I will take that any day of the week.
Absolutely.
And we had a decent spread in the top 8 too.
Mm-hmm.
We had a couple of scam decks. We got Rhinos. We had Mono Red. We had Abzan Depths. We had a Mono Black Helm.
Yes. I played against them round 1.
Yep.
It was scary.
It usually is that deck. But we have just a couple of wastelands traded back and forth here. Really not a whole lot going on. Which just means that as soon as something does happen, a lot's going to happen.
Absolutely. They're just trying to kind of feel each other out, see, whoever tries to make that first move, and then probably going to see a little bit of a fight.
See, yep, doesn't look like Carey's going to go for a turn 3 Cascade. At least not on his turn 3. Very much could see one going either at Ian's end step or in response to some spell he taps out for. A lot of different options with this Rhinos list of just being able to just at instant speed just make a threat.
Yeah.
Getting the basics out here early for Ian. He is respecting Blood Moons. Not sure if Carey is running the main deck, but in a 2-color deck where you can play around it anyway, better be safe than sorry.
Absolutely.
And we do have an end step Brainstorm here with the fetch land available. So pretty much just need to figure out, is Ian looking for a threat or is he looking for more answers? Whatever it is, Brainstorm usually solves all your problems.
Unfortunately. As a non-blue player.
It's 2 people in the booth who currently do not play Brainstorm. It usually solves your problems. And he has the cycle for the Troll to reset the Brainstorm, so he even gets to keep the fetch land available. Finds a nice looking Underground Sea. Let's see what he has for the follow-up. Going into his own, that was in the end step. So he's got a lot of stuff available to him now. This could even just honestly be a hard cast Grief potentially.
Right.
Animate Dead going for the Troll.
Some action back on Carey's side.
Get the trifecta of mana, cast just about anything in his deck at this point. See what he wants to actually cast. Could be something as simple as a hard cast Force Negation. Or pitching an Endurance. Pretty solid against the enemy deck. And hey, at least the Rhinos in hand does something.
Mm-hmm.
It is still a green card, even if it doesn't have that pip on it. Just a little bit of conversation about where the Animate Dead ends up. One of those weird cards that changes what it targets when it goes certain places.
Absolutely. Yeah, the first iterations having the mountain of text that we're used to for modern day cards.
Well, usually with the current cards, that mountain of text is upside, 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 mana reducer.
Yeah, fair enough. Follow up?
I want the endurance. You can have it. Because especially if Carey just snaps off and ends to Violent Outburst here, that 3/4 is not blocking 4/4s very well.
I am no mathematician, and I think you're correct on that.
Well, let me assure you, as an accountant, 4 is indeed greater than 3.
As our resident mathematician.
All right, Carey does go back to his own
Wasteland.
turn. Has the second Wasteland, so a little bit of Daze protection, perhaps. Could also just be his hand might suck. Endurance is going to get in there. Take a little chip shot it for 3. It doesn't seem like any follow-up, but yep, we
Nope.
got the Daze protection for the Violent Outburst here. Hopefully he doesn't have to go too far through the deck this time. I know when we saw the first Rhino that he cascaded.
Okay, so I did see the Minskin boot there.
I know that's one of your personal favorite cards.
Oh, it's so good.
Yep. And there's the Rhino. Let's see if there's a little bit of a fight over this. I always love having the big pile of cards when I'm cascading. But I'm not sure if I like having the big pile with like, would you like to cut my 2 cards and put them in a random order?
Gotta ask.
Yeah. Got hard cast days. Normal cast days. Yeah.
All right.
We got a Force of Will pitching a Fire Ice.
And I think this is what we were kind of looking for, right? Both these players are going to kind of build up their resources. There was a little bit of a fight with the first Animate Dead, and then I think this is what Carey was exactly going for.
Yep. Now we get the best Rhino token in the world back.
That's right. There it is.
All right, and then, yeah, he's untapping. So these Rhinos are definitely going to outrace the Endurance over there. And we get the 3-of-a-kind Wasteland. Yeah, crashing it for 8. That's half of Ian's life total. It's going to be a Brazen Borrower, perhaps?
Probably.
Could be a Brazen Borrower. Could be a Worker's Bowmaster just to absorb a little damage. I'm expecting this to be a Brazen Borrower. Brazen Borrower on the Rhino token. See if Carey can or wants to fight over this. Is this? Yep. Hardcast Force Negation. Yeah.
Yep. Okay.
Yep. Gets rid of that forever. So, one of the things about like the adventure cards, there's so many times where it feels so good when they resolve. It feels so bad when the adventure gets countered.
Absolutely. Carey able to get a Wasteland for that Ian's Underground Sea.
Putting the chokehold on his life total and his resources all at the same time. Tomb coming in. I feel like this is a 7/7.
I wouldn't bet against you.
Although Archon would actually be pretty good here too.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yep, Archon
Yep.
just get a little bit more life. Answer a Rhino right off the bat. And Carey's only got 1 card left, so you don't have to worry about Force. And since he's playing his Cascade deck, Daze doesn't matter. Guess we'll find out what it is soon enough when he discards it.
Absolutely.
And another Animate Dead. Alright, Archon trigger, Rhino goes away. It was the fourth wasteland.
Oh my lord. I think 1 or 2 are good, but man.
When it's not part of your primary game plan, having the extra copies is not always the best.
Absolutely.
Little drain, little gain. And yeah, this game has turned on a dime.
Absolutely. Back and forth. I think it was awesome to see as Carey wraps it up there. It felt like we were seeing 2 heavyweights just duking it out right there in the middle of the ring. And I think it's great to see that this is our finals matchup. We're able to see these people have been playing all day, and they're still coming out swinging. They're still doing it. They're showcasing these decks and how powerful they can actually be.
Exactly. But yeah, and like similar to last round, the Animator deck takes down game 1.
Absolutely.
We'll see if Carey's able to pull off the same trick he did last time.
Hey, you know what? We'll see. I'm wondering how many times Carey has played this today.
I have to assume it's been several matchups.
Yeah.
Because I'm not going to say the room was full of Reanimator, but there was a decent amount of Reanimator here today.
Definitely a chunk. We had 3 in our top 8. We're coming into the finals.
Yeah, there was one that lost a winning in to Ian, and so it's like there was definitely a decent amount of it towards the top tables. But then there was also a lot of people who really came prepared for this deck.
Absolutely.
I know David Lance, he ended up playing mono red today, and for anybody who knows David Lance, normally you think death and taxes, but we were talking earlier, and he said I don't want to play a miserable matchup 5 rounds today.
Yeah.
I'd rather play a deck that beats it.
Mm-hmm.
And so he switched playing mono red, and he went on a tear. He ended up making it to the top 8, ended up losing in the quarterfinals to Abzan Depths, which is definitely a weird matchup for mono red. Because you would think, oh, yeah, Blood Moon, land-based deck. Obviously great. But then you get a Dark Depths and play under Blood Moon. No counters on it. Blood Moon goes away, and you die.
Yeah.
So it's definitely a back-and-forth matchup.
Absolutely.
But
my big question is, do we think Ian had finished his matchup before to watch Carey use Brian's Archon against him? So is Ian taking out that Archon?
When I walked out, I did see Ian standing there watching the end of Carey versus Brian. So there's a chance it's still in there.
Mm-hmm.
There's also a chance that Ian knows that Carey knows that Ian knew he was doing it. So if he leaves it in and Carey takes it out, then who knows?
Yeah, right?
It could be anything.
It
could even be a boat.
How many layers deep do we want to get on this?
Okay, we are going into... And we're back.
Hey.
We grabbed that dip real quick. All right, we are going to get into game number 2 here. Ian is up a game. Turns out the Grief deck on the play is always going to be favored game 1. Weird. But Carey's got a lot of action in this match.
Absolutely. I mean, just the turnarounds we were able to see Carey do last match, I think was definitely something to say. And at both these decks, they're able to really close in and kind of strangle the other deck out and finish it off as a fast clock. But honestly, we've seen both of these decks grind as well, and I think it's going to be something where they're going to try and find the resources that they have, and there's going to be one point where they're going to start fighting over it, and whoever comes out on top of that, honestly, is most likely going to be the winner of this game.
And I think a lot of it's going to come down to exactly that. Is they're going to be mulligans, because both of these decks kind of have 2 halves that need to work together.
Yeah.
yeah, you need to have interaction when you're playing Rhinos. You still need to have these cascade cards. Because just having disruption is never going to be enough. Just having pressure is never going to be enough. You need to have a good mix of both. But when your opponent's also briefing you on turn 1, you have to wonder, how low can I actually go to find this balance?
For sure.
And it did look like Ian kept 7, so we'll have to see what Carey's able to pull off here. Definitely, the more I watch this scam deck play, the more I really don't want to play against it next weekend if I do that Mana Traders event.
Yeah.
I think I'm gonna either not play the event or have to figure out what beats this deck. Because I can guarantee this thing is going to be everywhere.
Absolutely. Here we go.
Yep. Step 1. Brief. Do we have step 2? Ooh, there's the option for turn 2 Blood Moon or turn 2 Cascade. I have to assume, taking the Cascade here, that Ian has Blood Moon taken care of.
Probably. We saw him go for those basics first anyway, and I think...
Yep, Underground Seed. That is just how you reanimate. He has the Blood Moon taken care of.
It's so powerful.
It really is. Now, let's see what Carey can come up with here. There's a lot of draws he can have here. Absolutely. Where he just pitches the Spirit Guide and just goes to town. It doesn't look like that's one of them. Right, come back over to Ian here. Start with the easy part. Just gotta see what his follow-up here. The other red card in Carey's hand was a Simian Spirit Guide. And we do allow full proxies here at Buffalo Chicken Dip. It's one of our ways to try to get more people into playing this format, whether you want to try a new Legacy deck or if you want to just try the format in general. There are so many ways that you can get into playing this format, and we just want to play.
Absolutely.
Like, if you want to show up and you have your printed out deck that you made at the library, yeah, sure. Let me grab my Legacy deck. I want to jam games because this is one of the most fun formats. I just want to play it.
Mm-hmm.
Unfortunately for Carey, he's not doing much playing of it right now.
It doesn't seem it's like it's that much fun right now.
Okay, brainstorm here for Ian. Looking for a little bit more pressure because attacking for 3 every turn is nice, but he still needs to close out this game before Carey is able to stabilize and get threatened to play. Whether it's one of his own or one of Ian's.
Absolutely.
But he did like the cards that he saw, and that Wasteland is definitely a solid pick. I'll be honest, there's nothing quite as scary as your opponent brainstorming at end step with a fetch lane in play and untapping and just drawing a card. Because that means all of them are gas. He did not play 2 lands that turn. The brainstorm was at the end step. Fetch lane coming in here. See if he's able to play a little bit more of a threat. Although with Carey just not drawing any more mana sources, he might not need much more of it.
Yeah. It's an unfortunate part of the game.
Hey, variance is why we play it.
Absolutely.
If we knew going in, oh yeah, this deck beats this deck, this beats that, this beats that, this beats that. Okay, we all showed up and registered. Okay, here's your trophy. Let's go home.
Yeah.
Like, you still want to play these games.
Yep. Well,
The old camouflaged sleeve. And Brazen Borrower as just a 3/1 with flash. And Carey wants to just protect his life total, which is simultaneously a show of strength and a show of weakness at the same time. It's not looking great for the Rhinos player here, that's for sure. Coming in for 6, Carey down to 4. One last draw step. Come on, windmill slam it. You know you want to. That's the whale of the something that I already forgot the name from earlier. But looking for a couple more cards, seeing if you can threaten to play. 2 lands to the graveyard. Forgotten. That is. Why is that so perfect that I forgotten? Alright. Carey does have the land drop. And he does have the Spirit Guide in hand. Unfortunately, if he fetches to use it, that Brazen Borrower on its own is just lethal. And that'll do it. We have our champion. We do have Scam at the top of the standings. We are going to be back in a quick minute. I'm going to see if we can get Ian and we'll get Robin here to talk with him about his win. Talk a little bit about the tournament in general. And we'll congratulate him on his performance. We'll be right back in a second.
Absolutely.
Hey everyone, thanks for joining us for ECDL 13. We're back with our winner, Ian Marshall. Ian, how you doing?
Uh, I'm doing great. I'm kind of in shock still. Can't believe I won.
Well,
Was,
we are going to get your name on the giant chicken. And just kind of take us through your day, tell us your thoughts on the deck, and yeah, what you thought on how it performed.
I was really happy with how it performed. Earlier in the week, I 03 dropped a league where I played the mirror 3 times, and I was like, maybe I'm not going to play this. But then I didn't have time to put together another league, so I just ended up bringing it in plays. Then I kind of got the proxy situation here confused with another event I'm playing in a couple weeks. So at the last minute, I had to swap out a couple cards from my deck list and ended up playing no Undercity Sewers and just went down to 16 lands. And I don't know, it worked out. So after kind of a scary start to the tournament, yeah, it went really well. I'm happy.
Nice. I mean, what did you think about some of the matchups you ran into? I mean, any weaknesses you see in the deck? What are your thoughts?
I don't know that I can really form any coherent thoughts on on the deck right now.
No, it's okay. I mean, were there some nail biters in there, or how did you play the mirror? What were
I played the mirror 3 times today, 2 times, and then one sort of pseudo mirror that was just Reanimator, not with the kind of mid-range package. It was interesting. My quarterfinals opponent ended up leaving in like the reanimate targets game 2, so I think that gave me a bit of an edge that took those out and then ended up being able to seal his Atraxa. Yeah. Otherwise, it's just kind of you put in a grief and hope it goes coast to coast. Hold up some forces and some dazes and get in with your 3-2. Kind of like Delver.
Yeah, it's definitely a very Delver-esque deck. I mean, I don't know if Chad has any questions. It's got anything? Give you a second, but no, we appreciate you playing and appreciate the support of BCDL. Thank you to everyone out there that's watched, either supported, subbed, followed, whatever. So you want a lifetime supply of dip? No. No lifetime supply of dip. We did have a couple of announcements before the tournament. The Warp Gate in Westerville, Ohio is moving to a new, larger space. They're shooting for August. And one of the things I've been sitting on is BCDL Open. So instead of Brewdog this year, we're going to do it at the Warp Gate's new spot when it opens. That'll probably be in August as well. More details on that later. And we'll have dip. We'll have dip for that one. So it'll get the cost down a little bit and kind of make it more accessible to more. So yeah, come out and look forward to seeing you there. We're also going to start BCDL Houston. So we'll have some events coming up in Texas for you in that part of the country. Ian, any final thoughts?
Yeah, I've seen Bullwrath write about this on MTG Goldfish, the Buffalo Chicken Open, all the time, and it's amazing to be here and to win it.
Hell yeah. I love it. I love when people just come out and fucking crush it. I mean, that was, if anyone didn't see the top 8 picture, there were 3 Eternal Weekend winners. The top 8. So it was a tough road. Congrats, Ian.
Thank you.
Hope to see you back in the future. To see everyone out there in the future, either in Columbus, Houston, or somewhere at an event. But that'll do it for us. Thank you for following. You can find us at BCD Legacy. You can find Ian and Dom at the Pregame Effect podcast. Find Brian at Bosch and Roll. He was on a couple matches. Thanks to everyone for tuning in, and see you next time.